Right, and we'd like to bring in a special guest right now to try and make sense of all of this. It is Derrick Johnson. He is president of the NAACP.
And he joins us now from Jackson, Mississippi. Welcome back to the program, sir. And I'm reminded a little bit of the Rodney King verdict in 1992, and I wondered then what I wonder now. How many of the people that we saw actually doing the looting and burning in Minneapolis could even tell you what happened to George Floyd on Monday?
You know, I wonder whether or not some of the rioting was incited by individuals that not only are not a part of our community, but less concerned about the incident. The NAACP, we released a report in December talking about the Twin Cities and the inequities that existed both in economic opportunities, education. And in that report, we said then that the reality of life for African Americans was like a powder keg. It could ignite at any time. What we seen with Mr. Floyd was the ignition that we spoke of in December of 2019. We have to address the inequities in this country. And when you have the level of disparities in a city like Minneapolis, where on one indicator it says one of the most livable cities in the country for whites, and another study shows that the disparities is greater in Minneapolis for African Americans than it is in Alabama, you know you truly have a problem.
Well, what about these protests and protesters? How are they able to express themselves without fear of getting in trouble with the law? How is it possible to have people protest but not fear that something comes out of that that's negative?
You know, the NAACP, we have long supported protests as a very effective tool when all of the systems go awry and there is no justice, there is no equity. The problem with protests, oftentimes the crowd can grow and you will lose control if it's not an organized protest with marshals and monitors, because there have been throughout histories incidents where people are implanted to be a part of protesters and their intentions are not the same as the protesters seeking to right wrongs or seeking justice where injustice exists. And it's unfortunate. I do know on last evening I was talking to our branch president of Minneapolis on a IG Live. She decided to go over to St. Paul. There's a community center where many African Americans go. And she walked through the site of the protesters. Everything was peaceful. And out of the blue, the police officer started shooting tear gas. And she was affected, and we caught it on camera. There was nothing that was done, but there was the police officers actually inciting a reaction. And fortunately, they did not respond. But unfortunately, without the proper controls in place, peaceful protests can go awry.
So I have to ask you, you know, the other side of the story that some people are saying, well, why are people rioting and looting and causing trouble in their own neighborhoods? How does this help their cause? All they're doing is destroying libraries and police precincts and in the very places where they have to live and raise their families. How do you address that?
In many cases, you have to ask the question, are these people who are actually part of that community? Do they live in that area? Then secondarily, when you have things such as a police station in your community that has been a terror in your community, have not provided equity, they have not traditionally been a place that have protected and served the community, and as opposed to aggressively policing, what is the relationship between the community and that police department? What is the relationship between the store owners and the community? Are those store owners supportive of the community, or they're predatory in the community? Those are the dynamics one must really evaluate as opposed to draw the conclusion.
Well, so you're in Jackson, Mississippi, so I have to ask you about this guy. Mayor Hal Marks of Petal, Mississippi, which is located outside of Hattiesburg, said that he, quote, didn't see anything unreasonable, end quote, about the death of George Floyd. And he tweeted thusly, and I think we have it to put on the screen here, if you can say you can't breathe, is what he said, you're breathing. Most likely that man died of an overdose or a heart attack. Video doesn't show his resistance that got him in that position. Police being crucified, end of his tweet. Now, he's been called upon to resign because of this commentary. and he refuses. He thinks he said nothing wrong. I'd like to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, ignorance go across state boundary lines, so you can find ignorant people all across the country. Petal is a very small city, so it's not like he's a mayor over of a city of 10,000, 20,000, 30,000. I'm almost positive it's less than 5,000 in that city. And to respond to his statements is to give credence to someone who's actually is not deserving of any response. Anytime you have video camera footage, multiple angles, multiple cameras showing the exact same thing, there was no resistance. You had 3 officers on top of this individual who said multiple times, "I cannot breathe." There was blood coming out of his mouth. This is unexcusable. We looked at the tape over and over at the NAACP. It was 8 minutes and 46 seconds, and it appeared as if they were not going to relent. I'm most concerned with the relationship between the officer with the knee on his neck and the victim, because apparently they've known each other, they've worked together, and I wonder if there was some type of intent behind what we witnessed on camera.
That's interesting. That is an interesting perspective, Derrick, but I just want to bring up the fact that the medical examiner's office did conclude the preliminary results were that George Floyd did not die of strangulation or asphyxiation, but of a heart condition complicated by intoxicants in his body, sort of alluding to the fact that maybe he had drugs or alcohol. They didn't come right out and say that. So does that change the situation?
No, that's a long-standing tactic to try to demonize the victim. Whether he had toxins in his body, whether he had alcohol in his body or not, is irrelevant to the responsibility and the duty of law enforcement officers. This is an individual who had been apprehended. He was not resisting. He was handcuffed. He was in a docile position, and there was no evidence that any intoxicants that may or may not have been in his body caused any threat to the officers. We need to be careful not to demonize the victim when the videos are very clear. You know, I really like Richard Pryor, and his joke that I found most funny was, "Who are you going to believe, me or your lying eyes?" We seen for a fact what was taking place, and this was a victim that was held pinned down to the ground for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, completely adhering to all of the orders of the officers. There was no resistance, and we should not carry the message to demonize the victim in this scenario at all, because those officers, that officer was completely wrong, and he committed murder in broad daylight on the streets, and everyone witnessed.
And by the way, the family is asking for an independent autopsy as well, to your point. Mr. Derrick Johnson, president of the NAACP in Jackson, Mississippi, thank you so much once again.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Stay with us. Much more BNC Prime News is coming up.